All right, everyone. I'm seeing a lot of names here I recognize, and it's awesome to kind of see you guys again. It's 3 o'clock Pacific time. This is the East Coast edition for all you East Coasters. So it's 6 p.m. For those folks on the East Coast, and you're all probably, signing off or getting off work right now. So we're going to give the East Coasters a bit more time. You'll see plenty of my face in a little bit, so I'm going to put myself on mute here and turn the camera off. And I'll be back in a little bit when we're ready to start. All right, I think we're about at critical mass here, so let's just go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the InBrace WTF series, where we can take a step back from our busy days and sit back and just ask ourselves, WTF, what's the future with InBrace? This is going to be a transparent series of webinars and study clubs, really centered around the real and raw talk that you guys have been asking for. That addresses the hits, the misses, the myths, and the innovations focused on removing the chaos from orthodontics, as we like to say, and most importantly, preparing us for what's to come in this near future that we're all creating together. Today's episode is going to be centered around Gen 2, where it is today and where it's going to be in the upcoming months. I'm Dr. John Pham, orthodontist, engineer, and founder of InBrace. I'm back with a new haircut and a new podcast for all of y'all. I'm here with Dr. Tera Poole, Director of Clinical of InBrace, and our Clinical Director for InStudio, which we'll talk about a bit more later. And Todd Oda, our VP of Insights and Innovation. Dr. Tera's background, she's a UCSF graduate, former Clinical Director of a venture-backed DSO, here on the West Coast, where they were pioneering clear aligner therapy. And she helped scale their department from 1 clinic to 9 clinics across the country in a very, very short amount of time. She was in private practice after that, and now serves again as Director of Clinical for InBrace and Clinical Director for our InStudio. Tera, you mind introducing yourself or saying a few words?
Yeah, first off, again, thank everybody for being on and joining us here this afternoon, I'll say, local time. And as John mentioned, I was the clinical director of an aligner-only DSO. So my background has been mainly centered around scaling orthodontic clinics and clinical process implementation. And now I lead the clinical team at InBrace and oversee the InStudio clinics. John touched on the InStudio clinics briefly earlier, but just a note, I know as clinicians that continuing to learn, to pivot and adapt, contribute to our success as orthodontists. And we take clinical pearls away from each other every day in all the forums that we're in. And so you can think of InStudio as our kind of brick and mortar training facility where US practitioners can come and take away your own clinical pearls and learn the best practices regarding all facets of the patient journey and treating with InBrace. And it's also our R&D hub that allows us to implement new innovations, some of the things we're going to talk about today, and Todd's going to tell you about quickly, so that then we're ready for when it's go to market time and for it to reach the hands of all our providers like you out there. So thanks, John, for the intro.
Yes, and you guys will be hearing a lot more from Dr. Tera in the upcoming months. I also have with me Mr. Todd Oda, or we like to call him here, Todd
Oda.
Yoda, one of the most brilliant, engineers I know. He's a mechanical engineer by training, been in the orthodontic space for over 20 years, working at companies that you may have heard of like Ormco and 3M. And he's best known for designing a bracket that I'm sure we all heard of called the Damon bracket. So he's kind of been like the man behind the man. So Todd, I'd love for you to, talk a little bit about sort of what you were thinking when you were developing Gen 2 and, building upon what Dr. Tong, envisioned with programmed non-sliding mechanics. I think that's something that we probably don't talk enough about, don't appreciate enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give you everybody just a brief background of my bio. I started my career in orthodontics in 1999. It seems like yesterday, but 1999 is when I started working at Ormco. I was so fortunate in that when I was there, Damon was just starting off. So as part of that journey to Damon's meteoric rise, learned a ton, designed a lot of orthodontic. The last Damon bracket that I designed was Damon Q. After Ormco, I went to work for 3M Unitech, redesigned all of their Victory Series buckle tubes and developed and launched their Victory Series active bracket. So after 3M Unitech came to InBrace, been here for a little over 3 years. It's been an absolute privilege working here.
Yeah. And so you brought a lot of things to the market, Todd, in previous careers, passive self-ligation, right? And again, program non-sliding mechanics now. We have a little slide here prepared for everyone. Maybe I'll pull up for you to talk through sort of what you were thinking as you were building upon the foundation that Dr. Tong created.
Yeah, okay.
So let me see here. I'll kind of start this here. Can you guys see the screen? All right.
Yep.
We're gonna do a little show and tell here, so.
Okay, so let's let the video start. Okay, so this is something that you see on every orthodontic system that uses sliding mechanics to move teeth. When teeth are straightening, the wire needs to slide within the lumen of the bracket, but when you bind it up with an elastomeric, like you're seeing here, it prevents the teeth from moving. And so it becomes it's a very inefficient way of moving teeth. InBrace was the first company to introduce programmed non-sliding mechanics to the orthodontic industry, created a whole new modality of how to move teeth. With this system, the wires are fixed to the bracket, and so there's no relative movement between the bracket and all of the teeth straightening is done by the flexing and compressing of the IP loops, what we call the intelligently programmed loops. So took the friction completely out of the system, made it really efficient to move teeth. We were able to lower the forces that the patient feels to move teeth, so it's very comfortable for the patient.
Yeah, I'm looking at the list of folks in this call, and we got both new users and folks who've been with us since day one. I think the folks who've been here for a while can say that programmed non-sliding mechanics definitely moves teeth pretty efficiently. But at the same time with Gen 1, it was a great revolutionary appliance. The goal there was to prove that programmed non-sliding mechanics works and that consumers want something like this.
Yeah.
But I think we learned a lot along the way too, right? Great feedback from folks. So maybe Todd, let's talk a little bit about what you were thinking on developing Gen 2 based on the feedback with Gen 1.
Absolutely. Yeah, so what you see on the left is Gen 1, Gen 2 on the right. Gen 1, like John mentioned, super revolutionary in that, it changed the way you can straighten teeth in orthodontics, take away the deficiencies of using sliding mechanics, prove that it's a very efficient way of unraveling teeth. But Gen 1, it did have its weaknesses. You can see the wire comes out the top of the bracket, made it very susceptible to people biting the wire and breaking it. The interaction between the wire and the bracket, a lot of slop in there. And the fact that we didn't have torque control on the lower anteriors, we didn't have the tooth control that we wanted towards the end of treatment as people are trying to line up the incisal edges of the teeth. we just didn't have that good tooth movement predictability with this system. The bracket, although very small, it had a lot of sharp edges, so it's uncomfortable for the patient. So we took all of these learnings and feedback that we got from all of our providers and started with a clean sheet of paper with Gen 2. It didn't have any carryover from Gen 1.
Todd, with the bracket, I think one of the main things too was the springboard change.
Yeah.
Removing
Yeah,
that.
so the springboard is what locks the wire to the bracket in Gen 1. The design, it took a lot of pounding from the wire, the mastication forces with the wire that the wire was seeing, really overloaded the springboard. We had a lot of springboard breakages. The bracket design itself was very open in the back. So when you went to bond the bracket, adhesive would jam that mechanism up.
Yep.
So Gen 2 got rid of all that. We went with a whole new spring design, very robust, protected that spring with the walls of the bracket. So when you're going to fit the patient up, adhesive can't get in there to give it a really strong bonding reliability. Went with the dovetail design for the base, really locks adhesive in there. So it had about a 200% increase in bond strength compared to Gen 1.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think this next one's really worth talking about too. I mean, we while we do produce a lot of hardware, but let's think about us as a software first company being able to innovate at the speed of software. And I think, you know, this technology that you have here and how we build our new Smartwires, Todd, really enables us to move like that.
Yeah, so what you're seeing on the top is Gen 1, and it's a circular cross-section wire. We bend the wire, and then we shape set the wire to the patient. The wire itself, we couldn't do heavy mechanics with it because we were limited to what we could use for cross-sections of the wire. The locking loops, interproximal loops, even I can't tell the difference between the two. So not a lot of good visual cues on this wire. Yep. For Gen 2, changed the way we manufacture the wire, made it very flexible so we can make a section of the mouth stiffer, section softer. We can do that at the speed of software. We can change it really quickly. We have 3 different material thicknesses, so we can go from light forces and we can keep stepping it up to do heavy mechanics with Gen 2. Very visual. Lockets go to brackets, so there's no mistaking what part goes into the bracket.
Tera, maybe you know, you've been in studio for quite some time now, and Ashley, did you get a chance to introduce what InStudio was?
Yeah, we spoke about that at the beginning. Our brick and mortar training facility, R&D hub, where we're piloting a lot of things that we're going to talk about later here. But I also want to call out while we're talking about the wires itself, because this being kind of more on that commercial and interfacing with our providers and hearing all the feedback, a big thing that came through for us was the pocket wire at the end of Gen 1. And we actually put out the recommendation to put a ball of glue on the end for our patient discomfort. But now with Gen 2, we've eliminated that. And with the locket, that shoulder ends right at that bracket, so we don't have that issue. So I think that's like huge call out for our providers on the call who have experience with Gen 1 versus Gen 2. And to your point, John, regarding InStudio and piloting Gen 2 and using Gen 2 within the clinic, first caps off to I within orthodontics. We all know that innovation is extremely slow, but Todd and his team took our feedback very quickly and was able to deliver on Gen 2 and gave us all those improvements that he spoke about. And we treated hundreds of cases within InStudio alone with Gen 2, and we've learned a lot. We're not saying that we're perfect with Gen 2. And some of the things that I can say that we are learning is that, especially with the first iteration of Gen 2, that removing the smart wires was very technique sensitive. We had those high force springs, my bad. And so now we've put out our low force Gen 2, which I think a lot of providers have given us the feedback that total game changer. So if any are in attendance as well today can speak to that, I'm sure. And then I also know that we also are striving for simpler and simpler protocols to use less auxiliaries. So within InStudio and the Gen 2 wires, we piloted some specialty smart wires, we call them. So additions to the IP loops and changes to be able to treat certain movements, more complex movements like rotations, opening spaces, I won't go down the list. We're orthodontists on this call. But Todd has been able to pilot and alpha some of the asks that we have from the clinical team so that it can be open for our providers later. So Todd, do you want to kind of go into the specialty smart wires right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the first one that we have up is what we call a W loop. So where you have a large interbracket distance, such as teeth that are really rotated, or where you're trying to close spaces, this W loop gives you about 60% more stretch than a standard U loop. So very flexy. You can connect it to teeth that are really far apart.
You say very flexy? I like that.
Very
Yeah,
flexy.
I like
That's a technical term.
That's
But you can.
You're looking very flexy yourself.
Yeah. But you can see on the picture on the right or the left, really rotated bicuspids, a lot of interbracket distance. So we had to derotate these teeth. They were laid back, so we had to upright them. But after 6 months, you see the progress that we had with this patient. Really good progress.
And Todd, I actually haven't told you this, but I have, similar to our picture, I have a rotated premolar on my lower left side.
Okay.
And so I've got a W loop. So I can speak
Fantastic.
directly to the predictability of these as well.
I mean, that's a little InBrace game here. 2 out of the 3 of us are wearing InBrace right now. Guess who?
Oh, well, I just gave it away for one. Yeah.
Okay.
My bad.
If I design it, I gotta wear it. So I am the second one.
So let's maybe, move along here with some other, the specialty smart wires, Todd.
Yeah, so for crowded, this is what we call a crowded wire case, or crowded wire. Patients with very narrow teeth, what we didn't want were the IP loops colliding against each other. So with the crowded wire, we have one leg of the IP loop coming out the leg of the bracket or the locket. And on the adjacent locket, we have it going into the shoulder, so we can shrink that distance and allow us to use it on patients with very narrow teeth. You'll see it a lot on Smartwire 1, 2, and 3. Because Smartwire 2 and 3, the loops get wider. So we just want to make sure as you're getting closer and closer to finishing that you don't have this collision, because when you have these collisions, it could create diastema's, and that's not something that we want.
And when we talk about finishing, just on that note, just like putting forth a recommendation here, because I know a lot of orthos we look at, especially that lower 3 of 3 region, when we're finishing in those small fine tuning movements, and those are typically obviously the most narrow teeth in the arch. And so these crowded wires or crowded loops are really good for that lower 2 to 2 when you have those types of patients. So definitely an advocate for the crowded wire loops.
All right, and this wire is called a mini tab. It's about half the size of a regular locket, and we use it where you have a tooth that is partially blocked out, so you can't directionally bond a full-size locket. You can't get a bracket on there. You're trying to make space, you're trying to derotate the teeth. So we have this thing called a mini tab, and it's directionally bonded to a tooth. It acts just like you connecting a locket to a bracket. It gives you that tooth control and derotates teeth, opens up space. A very efficient tool for taking some of the crowding out of the person's arch. And then the last one that we have for unblocking teeth is called a pusher loop. Acts very much like an open coil spring. If you have a tooth that's completely blocked out, a pusher loop will push the block of teeth away, make room for that tooth to come in. It's not technique sensitive. You put it in, you let it run. Once you have this tooth unblocked, like you're seeing below, you can put a bracket on, or if there's some rotation in it, you can direct bond or directionally bond the locket to that tooth. But pusher loops are great for unblocking blocked out teeth.
And we are piloting these within our in-studio clinics and a certain subset of our providers as well. So if you've been into the clinics, you might have seen these, or one of those providers, you may have seen them as well. Specifically in regards to the pusher loop, we've seen great predictability with the upper and lower 3s, and when they're blocked out, and creating enough space so then you can get a mini tab onto it or direct bond the locket. So just wanted to make that call out there, Todd.
Yeah, these specialty smart wires. I mean, I spent a lot of time traveling over the last year, visiting all of you, getting feedback from Gen 2, and big kudos to, of course, the R&D department, the I&I department is what we call it, Insights Innovation. But even bigger kudos really for the feedback, the straight talk from all of you guys that are listening. It wasn't for that feedback, and some of you guys even co-developed these loops with us. We wouldn't be here today. So we've had some very, very good feedback on these specialty smart wires. And again, we hope to be pushing this out in a matter of months, widely, not years. But Todd, if you can just encapsulate broadly these specialty smart wires, what was the goal in developing them?
Yeah, so the goal is to take out all the chaos that a doctor has to go through when treating a patient, trying to make the case just flow seamlessly through the office. So make it very efficient for the office to use InBrace. Just trying to take the chaos out of the system. We're doing all the work for the doctor.
Yeah. And then Dr. Tera, again, what you've seen, how has it impacted you by the chair side?
I'd say the goal and how it's impacted is really the predictability of the movements. It's created those complex movements that might have been a little bit more difficult with our just original kind of wire design. It has helped with the predictability of those actually playing out. And so in terms of patient cases, we know what to expect, we know what to do. And I think for any clinician, that's kind of our main goal, right? When we see a case, we want to know what's coming. We want to know how to plan it. We want to have a plan A. Some of us want to have a plan B as well. But with these specialty smart wires, we can really use them to get the goal that we set out to achieve.
Yeah, for myself, I mean, I'm spending a lot more time in the clinic with you now, Dr. Tera. Yeah. Just making it more delegable because it's all kind of planned beforehand and less auxiliaries, right? I mean, it's still orthodontic, so you still got to use it here and there, but not as much as before with these wires. So thank you, Todd, for that.
Yeah,
not a problem. Move on to the next thing here. I want to talk about single tooth IDB tray, Todd.
Absolutely. So we've got a lot of feedback from providers requesting a need for single tooth IDB trays for the bond fillators that they have. So we've developed a special single tooth IDB tray. It's a dual hardness tray, so it's rigid on the outside, soft on the inside, so it conforms to the patient's teeth really well.
So this one's not flexy.
The inside is flexy, the outside is rigid. It's yeah, non-flexy. It's very delegable to the OA. So a doctor doesn't have to direct bond a bracket. We can delegate it to the OA now. Accurate bond placement or bracket placement. So it's in beta testing right now. It's working really well. So hopefully before the end of the year, we can launch this product also.
Awesome. So, on the hardware side, just to kind of sum up here, the innovations that you may have already seen come through or are coming through soon are the specialty smart wires, the single tooth IDB tray. I think we kind of just breezed through the low force brackets, but those low force brackets from the feedback we've heard, it's butter. Okay. Yep. And I think it's super important to give a shout out to Dr. Schwartz, who helped us develop the Smartwire plier. Yep. Right. So maybe we can spend a few minutes talking about that.
Yeah. Do you want to go back to that first slide? We kind of went through it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Which one?
Where we had Gen 1 next side by side with Gen 2. Yep. So we didn't get a really good chance to talk about the benefits of Gen 2, but smooth contoured edges, super comfortable. Again, I'm wearing it, so I can attest that it's very comfortable. The wire, the IP loops come off towards the middle of the bracket versus coming out the top of the bracket, so makes it almost impossible to bite on the wire and break the wire. The interaction between the bracket and the wire, there's almost no slop there, so you get really good tooth control, especially as you start going up to Smartwire 2 and 3. There's almost no slop in the system. Now, one thing that we did talk about was the low force bracket. So when we launched this Gen 2 in March or April last year, we got a lot of feedback from providers that were saying the force to get the wire in and out of the bracket was just too high. It was uncomfortable for the patients. It was uncomfortable for the providers. So worked really hard at developing kind of what we call a low force spring. So it's a thinner walled spring, super reliable, but it gives us that softer force to be able to get the wire in and out with a more comfortable level of force. So we mentioned the Smartwire pliers. Scott Schwartz is my hero. I talk to him every week. absolute genius. So he worked really closely with the lower to develop what we call a Smartwire plier. So people that have the high force brackets, the Smartwire plier is butter. It has equal and opposite forces, so it makes it very comfortable for the patient and very comfortable for the provider. Taking the high force use, if you have a high force bracket, makes it very easy for the wire to be taken in and out.
And I can speak clinically also a good use. Sometimes we do have the question, our patients come in, we know the lower lingual of the anterior, a little bit of calculus buildup sometimes. So if you're having a little bit of difficulty with calculus, you can use a Smartwire plier as well, and that'll help loosen it up and then disengage the wire. So that's been a game changer in those cases as well. But yeah, runs like butter. John used it as well, compared to the engager tool. So both work, but definitely in the high force or situations where you're having a little bit of difficulty getting the wire out, utilize that Smartwire plier.
Yeah, I mean, with the soft force brackets, that engager is just so fast to get the wire in and out. But there's definitely a need for both.
Yep.
Okay. So, look, everybody, it's orthodontics. Well, we're all pretty experienced. Try both, see what works for you. And even with labial, not whatever plier works for everything, right? So just keep giving us the feedback, and we'll keep making sure that we iterate and improve things for everyone out there. So I think that pretty much sums up for the near term hardware improvements that we have coming out. And again, we mentioned what really enables our platform is software, and we live in a digital technology age, and it's really this digital platform we've built that really helps us move at the speed of software. So I do get the honor here of talking a little bit about software and what we have in store. So we have coming later on this year, I know folks have been asking for this for a while, is 3D controls of the smile design that you can do yourself. That's a little yay claps over there. And this is a bit long overdue, but we had to really focus on getting Gen 2 out there first, and doing some improvements of the underlying structure of our smile design platform. But I think having these 3D controls will really help you make those little fine tweaks that you want in the smile design, and just let our team do all the heavy work. So this will be coming out. We also have bracket visualization tools where you can see the bracket placement before it gets shipped to you. We're a long time ago, we had some integration with the top intraoral scanners out there, and for various reasons we moved away from that, or we weren't able to do that. But now we are working on that vertical integration with your with all the popular intraoral scanners out there as well. And of course, many other improvements on the software side, just to make that whole submission process easier for you, help communication be easier for you, and help you, organize your cases much better. Okay. So let me see here. At this point, I think we've covered all the innovation. We got some questions coming through, so maybe it's a good time to field some questions.
And if anybody has any more, you can feel free to type them in the Q&A, and we'll see them come through on our side. Just
So this is from I think a newer provider. What is the adjustment period like for patients? I mean, this is Dr. Tera.
Yeah, I guess I did get fitted the most recently, I think, out of all of us, fitted about last month. And so I can speak, I guess, personally to the adjustment period. But I also think there's a little bit of a little myth out there in terms of lingual or behind the teeth appliances, because I feel like we've been treating with these different appliances for a long time that are, I guess, behind the teeth. They're on the palate, right? We have RPEs, we have quad helixes, we have TPAs, all of that. We got what, bite cribs or tongue cribs? Like, we've got all these things that we utilize, and it does have an adjustment period as well. But for some reason, the thought of InBrace or a lingual appliance system or behind the teeth appliance system is kind of a little bit more of a scary thought of the adjustment period. But I guess I can speak personally to it that it was not any different than any other modality. I did have aligner therapy. I had bite turbos. I've had buttons placed and buttons placed on the lingual before as well. So it wasn't any different than that experience at all. There is a small adjustment in terms of the tongue and speaking and whatnot, but we have the same thing with the buccal, your cheeks, TPAs. I'm sure we've seen it where it leaves an imprint in the patient's tongue when they come back. So I know, John, you've probably seen that clinically as well, especially a quad helix too. I saw that in residency, but it's not much of a difference. So if that says anything for itself.
I think you said it well. So we've all been treating on the lingual surface forever. You know, we even use those lingual buttons, you know, oftentimes, and you know, we put in the patient, we let them go, we don't see them for 6 weeks, and we forget what they go through. But I think that speaks a lot to patient management and just us knowing how to navigate through, you know, all those things.
And on the kind of like patient management, what we see it in studio, we give every patient a patient care kit when they come in for their initial fitting. And we have a full script that all our RDAs run through. And we've actually gotten feedback from patients after the fact that Lino prepared me very well, Jennifer prepared me very well. So I think it also comes to setting the expectation for those patients after their initial fitting. And again, in studio is where we do our best practices. So happy to share what that looks like for us. But that's been a big game changer. And some of the things that we include in our kit are like a portable water flosser. We have a mouth rinse, different things of that nature to help with that kind of a small adjustment period there. But I think just setting the right expectation and managing the patient through that. We're orthos, again, don't need a dead horse here, but that's also helped our patients within the in-studio clinics.
Now, setting expectations, though, that does not mean scaring the hell out of them.
No.
I mean, you know, when I put an RPE in, I don't say you're going to hate me for 2-3 weeks, you know, I just tell them, hey, you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable for the first X number of days. And then after that, the benefits are XYZ, right? Yeah. So I see that a lot too, is, you know, the TC or whoever, it's just kind of, it's almost scaring them out of treatment, you know, and that's to me, not really, I think, the appropriate way. I don't see us doing that with clear aligners, you know, so anyway, that's just my 2 cents there on that. Let me see here. What other questions do we have coming through? Oh, this is a good one. How many cases does it take to get good at InBrace?
Oh, that's a good one. I love this kind of question. So John, let me ask you, how long did it take you to get comfortable with labial?
Not 1 or 2 and sit around and wait for it to finish.
How many years of training did you go through to get where you are in terms of comfortability of treating a buccal on the buccal? I'll say like 2 to 3 years, right? We all go through residency. Did you've heard of, or at least done, I did the aligner intensive fellowship. I know before building out the clinics within the DSO. John, you've heard about it. Todd, you've heard about it through us, I'm sure. But that's 18-ish weeks, 50 hours, something. Essentially it takes time, right? You're not going to get there, as John said, in 1 to 2 cases and kind of just sitting there waiting. It's constant learning, it's constant doing and constant monitoring, and also with intention, I would say, right? If you do 10 cases, but you're not really looking at what's going on and present, then it's going to take a little bit longer to understand, versus if you do 10 and you follow them very closely as a doctor and you're watching the mechanics, you're seeing how it all plays out, you're going to learn in a totally different fashion. So with that, I think you need to do the cases and be comfortable. And the confidence comes from, we're just building on the foundation that we know already as orthodontics. I feel like, especially, I don't want to say new grad because I'm not a new grad anymore, but being, I guess, in the field for less amount of time, I feel like there's a little bit of a scare around braces now being on the backside, and like it's totally different mechanically or biomechanics, and hey, I didn't know this, I don't learn this. But in residency, we also didn't learn a lot on how to place tags. We didn't learn a lot on certain appliances unless we had a faculty member that did it. And we learned on our own, in a sense. So I think it's the same thing here, but you're not on your own, which is the good thing, because we offer a lot of different resources that I won't go into at this moment. But we do have different ways for you to learn, and even chairside TISs. To me, that's what other company gives you, essentially a dental assistant that's going to be there every appointment. It's like unheard of when I was in private practice. I wish we had that for different things. But that is huge in itself. So I say all that to say,
Yeah,
you
well,
gotta dive in.
you know, I think, and we got some more questions coming in here. I need to move on. But definitely on the question of how to get good at InBrace. It's about attention and intention. We got some people doing, 100% InBrace, 30, 40 cases a month. We got some people doing as little as, 2 a week. But I think if we just leverage the things we've learned from labial, bracket and wire treatment, and what we know about digital clear aligner treatment, InBrace will pick it up pretty quickly, because this is really leveraging things you already know from those two things. Okay.
Got a comment,
Now,
actually.
I'm sorry, you want to add something before I go on to the next question?
Yeah, in the chat, we just posted a comment from Dr. Dabney here. It's all about mechanics, treatment planning, and holding patients' hands. If you can do it with a retainer or facial brackets, you can do it with lingual. Ask if you get to a situation you have not experienced before. Your techs are great. So that's our TISs. We have a team of docs, our clinical review team. So speaks directly to it.
Got to give a shout out to Billy Bob Dabney. Love you, Dr. Dabney. Here's a question here. How is the torque control with Gen 2 now compared to Gen 1? So maybe that's a Todd question.
Yeah, so Gen 2, just for reference, so if you're in Smartwire 2, you have about plus or minus 5 degrees of, I guess we call it slop, but slop between the wire and the bracket. When you get to Smartwire 3, you're at plus or minus 2 degrees of torque control. But for Gen 2, the way it's designed, you're always trying to express that torque.
Because it's active. It's an active.
The locking spring is making that wire active. So Gen 2 always wants to express all 6 degrees of freedom of bracket control. Gen 1 was loosey-goosey. It was probably 5 plus or minus 15 degrees of torque control on Gen 1. So Gen 2 far better on torque control.
This is where I'll jump in. I'll just kind of nerd out a little bit. But really, it's when you're doing sliding mechanics, folks, passive self-ligation is great for the initial stages, because you can just slide around. But what happens in the end and finishing? I mean, what people say is that it's really hard to finish with passive self-ligation. And the word active ligation is almost a bad word in sliding mechanics. But again, with PNM, you notice here, it allows you to get the best of both worlds. You literally have no friction, for the initial stages. So very quick level aligning. And now with Gen 2, the active component of it allows you to, full expression of the prescription. So let me see here. Oh, Dr. Dash, Dr. Dash, are you developing any other tools to help with wire placement? We love the new wire removal tool, !
So when we designed Gen 2, we made everything very visible. So there are no hidden slots. Everything is very visible. Try to make it as easy as possible for the provider to put the wire in. So right now, if it is an issue right now, please let us know what the pain points are, and we'll start working on it. But right now, we're not developing any other tools for wire placement.
We've had good, feedback from the use of the engager. So, but Dr. Dash, as you said, if you have any feedback, let us know, and we can iterate. That's what we do. So we can iterate on that design as well. But right now sticking with the engager tool mainly for insertion, and then Smartwire applier if needed for disengagement.
Yeah. So, better than that, let's reach out to Dr. Dash to see what specifically she is referring to there.
Sure.
The amazing participation. Dr. Tera or Todd, is there anything else you want to add before I wrap it up?
No, I think.
Yeah, it's just been an absolute pleasure. Thank you all for joining.
Okay, great.
Giving us your feedback is what he's about to say, because that's how we iterate. That's how we bring these to market, and that's how we make the experience for you guys and for our patients. better, smoother.
All right, everyone. Well, that about wraps it up. Thank you for listening in to our very first episode of the WTF series, East Coast Edition. And really, the purpose of WTF, again, is to have a series of webinars and study clubs centered around the real and raw talk, to talk about the misses, the myths, the innovations focused on removing the chaos from orthodontics, and most importantly, about this future that we're all creating together. This particular episode was focused on Gen 2, where it is now, and where we're going to be in the near future. We're going to have many more episodes focused on things like smile design setups, finishing protocols, and clinical pearls based on all the feedback from all of you. This is very, very important. Please, there's going to be a survey coming out that's going to be sent to all your emails. Please give us your feedback on this episode, what was helpful, what wasn't, and what you want to see more of. Just keep an eye out on your inbox as many more episodes are going to be coming your way. Meanwhile, we're looking forward to seeing everyone at AAO. You're going to be there. So InBrace is going to be doing something very special, where our company's top executives will be available to schedule one-on-ones with each and every one of you to hear your feedback and to share with you our plans on marketing and on innovation. So if you're interested in meeting with our management team, we'd love to schedule a one-on-one with you. Please email Shay at the email that you see right here on the screen. And if you're new to InBrace or you're interested in becoming an InBrace provider, please scan the QR code here on the screen and we'll be in contact. So this concludes our first episode. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule with us to take a step back and ask ourselves, WTF, what's the future with InBrace?